I'm counting down my top 10 games releasing on Steam in March. Let me know what you think. We are starting off the list here with the very interesting looking tactical game called Knights in Tight Spaces. This turn-based game returns us to the Fights in Tight Spaces universe, battling through some medieval times with an art style that looks distinct and very unique compared to other games in this genre. In classic deck building based gameplay, you'll have to make sure that you learn new and interesting synergies, utilize these well in your fights in order to keep the tactical advantage and win the fight. You have the ability to recruit some interesting characters, some friendly, some not so friendly, and choose from up to 300 cards to build your deck, with different classes and gear to equip as well. Knights in Tight Spaces releases today. Go check it out right away. This next title in our list just looks so quirky and interesting that it could be amazing or it could be a pile of rubbish. It's called ENA Dream Barbecue, a surrealistic adventure as you explore strange world, take on some side gigs and search for an interesting boss that everyone kind of wants to be. This game's all about that really quirky environment with a bunch of really funny looking characters and a whole lot of different experiences for you to play through. This is not going to be for everyone, but it definitely looks unique. ENA Dream Barbecue releasing on the 27th of March. If you like hack and slash based games, then Dragonkin the Banished could well be a title that you look into here, releasing on the 5th of March on Steam. In this game, you play through a world that's been corrupted by the blood of dragons, and you need to choose your class. A pretty simple mission: hunt down and kill as many of these draconic creatures as you can. Really fast-paced battle mechanics and quite nice looking graphics of what you can expect when you play through this one, with 3 different classes to choose from: the barbarian, the oracle and the knight, and a pretty interesting looking upgrade tree. I'm curious to see how this one works out. Let me know what you think about Dragonkin the Banished. As I said, releasing really soon. A slight change of pace here as we move on to the very cute, interesting, curious looking game called Wanderstop, a game that is all about a crazy and quirky world in which you need to brew and serve tea. Yes, this is one of those really cozy games in which you are not meant to be dealing with too much tension or conflict beyond the want to serve a nice cup of brew to your customers. It is a bit of a harvest management style game, although the trailer shows us hints of trauma there, so be curious to see what's the background story for our main character. And of course, with every cozy game like this, you have the ability to do some decorating and tidying up around the town. Wanderstop is releasing on the 11th of March. Let's move on to Split Fiction, a highly anticipated co-op game from the publishers of It Takes Two, perhaps the most famous co-op game that I can think of from the last few years. In this game, you play as 2 different writers that go into this simulation, which they bring their writing stories to life, but they kind of get trapped, perhaps not by accident, and then you'll have to work together with your friends to try and make your way through these sci-fi and fantasy-based worlds, which essentially are meant to be the creations of the 2 writers that have jumped into this simulation. You know that Split Fiction is going to have some really good co-op gameplay. The graphics are quite nice. The story looks interesting, maybe a little bit cliche to me, but you can check out Split Fiction on the 6th of March. Let's move on to a survival-based game that's releasing on the 27th of March, and it's called Atomfall, a game that's based in a British island that's being destroyed by nuclear disaster. So, as in all survival-based games, your job is going to be do some exploring, some crafting, and try and work your way through a world that looks really fantastic in terms of graphics, and like it's got a fair bit of tension in it. There's some really interesting storylines that you get to unravel as you play through, and you'll need to make some choices around which items you keep, which you scavenge, as things like weapons and ammunition are kind of hard to find. I'm a big fan of survival-based games, and if this one's done well, it could well be one of the better survival games of this year. As I said, Atomfall releasing on the 27th of March. Let's jump into a roguelike, and I think Reignbreaker could well be one of the better roguelike games that we see in the next couple of months as you play through a dystopian medieval punk world with fast-paced action and some really cool hack and slash style battle mechanics. In this game, you'll be playing as Clef, who is this rebel, and your job is to try and rid the world of this kingdom's oppression. So we've got that classic rebellious style main character. With classic roguelike mechanics, you'll be able to upgrade your javelin upon dying, choose between different power-ups, and experience a pretty lovely looking game. I quite like the design with this style. Reignbreaker is releasing on the 18th of March. Alright, I feel like we're getting into the really big titles now with some of these games, and we'll talk about AI Limit first, which, releasing on the 27th of March, is a really epic in scale, Souls-like 3D action-adventure game that has some really interesting sci-fi elements in another dystopian-style world called Havenswell, the Last City. In this post-apocalyptic world, you'll be playing through an environment that's collapsed, there's natural disasters, there's this mud that's spreading everywhere, and now there's monsters emerging from the mud. So, as you can imagine, your job's going to be to try and get in there and clear this. You actually play as this kind of technology-based being called a blader, which whilst it looks like a human, there's a whole lot more to it. And that sort of impacts the different battle mechanics and the way that you interact in a very anime-looking game as well. I think AI Limit could be pretty good. It's releasing on the 27th of March, although sometimes these games have a habit of flopping, so I am definitely keeping an eye on reviews before I jump into this one. I think this could well be the first time that I have featured a driving-based game on one of my lists, and it's called JDM, Japanese Drift Master, an absolutely stunning-looking driving racing sim-style game that has some open world elements, and you can play this one on the 26th of March. Now, this is not a genre that is close to my heart, although when I look through the trailer, I am blown away by the visuals here, and I think it could be one of those games that everyone enjoys, not just those that love racing sims. You can expect some pretty good customization skills here. The developers have said there's over 250 kilometers of really visually stunning roads, and of course, a whole lot of drifting with some pretty cool physics-based systems. I'm curious about the story, whether or not that's really something that you get into. Apparently it's got some manga storytelling, but really, if it's fun to drive through and there's a whole lot of beautiful worlds, then this might be one of those games that's just a really good plug-and-play, relaxing style racing game. As I said, JDM, Japanese Drift Master, releasing on the 26th of March. Alright, my number one game shouldn't come as any surprise. It's a game that I've mentioned multiple times, and it's called the first Berserker Khazan, releasing again on the 27th of March with this hardcore action role-playing game that has so much blood and action in its trailer, and definitely is one of the more anticipated games that I can think of over the first few months of 2025. Khazan promises some really fast-paced action, amazing in scale boss fights, and a story of revenge as you play as the great General Khazan, who has been falsely accused of treason, and now you're on the way back, ready to give a whole lot of vengeance. There's going to be a whole lot of fun with the experience system and skill combinations, and I just got to say that I'm looking forward to playing this game a lot, so it is my number one game releasing in March. Let me know whether you agree, whether you disagree, and if you have watched this far, consider clicking on the subscribe button. It's completely free, but it lets YouTube know that this channel doesn't stink. See you next time.